this email? What does it mean?
Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or news.
The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Conversation is the oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas.
Forbes Books Radio presents The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett.
Welcome back to part two of my conversation with Libby Sander, an award-winning assistant professor of organizational behavior in the business school at Bond University in Australia. Shifting gears a little bit now from technology to work environment, what effect do you think a person's workspace has on their productivity, creativity, collaboration, etc.?
Yeah, it has an enormous effect. And so this is, my kind of primary research area is looking at what impact it has on our brains, on our emotions, and then also how we connect to others and our performance. And so it's something that has been, we kind of know it's out there, but surprisingly, there's not a lot of research looking at the whole work environment. So for example, we know, okay, plants make us less stressed. So we're seeing a lot more plants in offices now. So that's a good thing. We know that having these cafe areas in offices make it more collaborative, and, we get to catch up and have informal gathering spaces. But we haven't really looked enough about how does the entire environment affect us. And it has a huge role. It can make us either, much more stressed. And one of the concerns with that is, we often have people self-report that, I know my office is noisy in this open plan, and I know that I get interrupted a lot, but I don't feel that stressed. But then if you test their cortisol levels, it actually shows that they are significantly stressed. So our environment can stress us physiologically much more than we realize. We don't habituate to noise, so it can be affecting things like our blood pressure, our stress hormone levels, our ability to kind of switch off at the end of the day, how we sleep at night. It can certainly make us emotionally more frustrated and cranky. So when people just can't focus to do their job, whether it's too noisy or they get interrupted all the time, then they actually become less collaborative. They become more withdrawn, they become more hostile, and they actually want to interact with other people less. So, for example, if we just shove everyone into one big open plan office and we think, it's going to make them problem solve more and collaborate more, it actually doesn't, okay? There are a lot more kind of sophisticated things that we need to do. It can have the opposite effect of making people collaborate less because they just can't think to get their job done. So it actually has a huge impact on us.
So it also has an effect on relationships then as well.
Absolutely. So there was an interesting study that was done on, hot desking, activity-based work environments where people don't have a fixed desk. And so the idea of that is you get a new desk every day. And then today I'm sitting next to Clint, so I get to meet Clint and find all about Clint and, hopefully get some ideas from him and we can share problems. And the next day I'm sitting next to Jane. But what the research showed was that in environments where that's done poorly, people actually become less collaborative. So they think, well, I don't know who you are, Clint, and I've never seen you before. I'm not going to see you tomorrow. So I'm actually not even bothered to find out who you are and introduce myself because I've got too many other problems. I've had to get myself out of my locker and take 10 minutes to find somewhere to sit, and I'm really stressed about that. So I'm just not even going to say hello. So, there's some surprising findings in this research.
Now, ostensibly open plan offices where there's no walls, no privacy, little separation between workers is supposed to facilitate collaboration. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, it actually isn't now. We've looked at some meta-analyses over, decades of research now, and just putting everyone together in a room actually doesn't make them communicate more or collaborate more. It often has the opposite effect because people feel they don't have any control over their work environment, and that's a very important thing for us as humans. So they have no control over interruptions or, particularly noise is a huge issue. So background noise, other people talking, someone having a fight on the phone with their partner, eating their lunch next to you and being really noisy. I think everyone can relate to that in an open plan office. It just drives people crazy. People having conference calls on speaker at their desk, when other people around them are trying to work. And so all of these factors are really critical in terms of our own personal approach to work. And if we can't get our job done, then we're not going to collaborate because we're just frustrated and we're stressed. And so the original idea of open plan just, hasn't worked.
I heard you mention a stat that really surprised me. You said that 75% of people can't really concentrate at work, and as a result, they often leave the office to work from home or a cafe. Why is someone better able to concentrate at a loud Starbucks than they would at a loud office?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, actually. When we are in the office, if there are background conversations or things going on, our brain automatically tunes into them, right? Because we think, okay, this might be something I need to know because it's people in my workplace, right? So it could be about something that is going on that I need to know, or it could be about me, right? And so your brain is just unconsciously tuning into that. And it's something that we really can't switch off because in the context of the office, we think, well, everything potentially could be relevant. When you're in a cafe, it's very unlikely to be about you, other people's conversations, hopefully. And it's also very unlikely to be about your workplace. And so that kind of background hum at a certain level has actually been shown to be really good for creativity. Like deathly silence is not necessarily the best thing for creativity. So we can go to the cafe or like the airport lounge, and that is actually quite comforting for people. Like Starbucks was one of the original, third offices, because you can have this background hum, but your brain is not tuning into it, and you can kind of just do your thing. And so I think, that's a common thing that people say, well, people work in noisy cafes. It's no different. It's actually quite a bit different from our brain's point of view.
Plus, if I don't know the person giving me really personal information on the phone to their partner, how many times you overheard something that was really embarrassing,
Right.
that you heard it? If it's in the office, who they're talking about is different.
Exactly. And then it's really awkward afterwards. You might have to carry on and be working with him. You're like, oh, I don't know what to say after that. Should I say, are you okay? Or just try to ignore that happened?
Yeah, it's surprising to me how people, when they're on the phone, even in a place, they don't mind saying these really personal things. Like, I can hear you, right? It's surprising.
Exactly. Yeah, I was in a cafe the other day here and just having some food with my kids, and this guy was doing a work meeting and he was on his phone and he was kind of doing the pacing up and down and he was on speaker, and he didn't go outside. He's like walking around the cafe just having this loud conversation that everyone can hear, and I just was kind of looking at him fascinated to go, do you not have any filter? Like, you're in a cafe and all these people are just trying to have food or do whatever they're doing, and why don't you just go outside? Like, we live in Australia, it's always, you're never going to freeze to death here. It's very warm, especially in Queensland where I am. It's winter and it's 23 degrees Celsius in the day. So I think people just and that's another thing, often we're so inconsiderate in the office, and that is a big complaint as well, that people eat fish curry at their desk or talk, have arguments with their partner on the phone, and we just don't consider that, well, actually other people are trying to work here. It's a really strange phenomenon.
They talked a while back about letting people have cell phones actually work on the plane and be able to make calls, and I'm not looking forward to that day because it's like the one time I'm not having to listen to 17 other conversations at once.
100%. I even hate the idea of Wi-Fi on planes. Like, I know that, especially where we live in Australia, it can be 13 hours or 24 hours to Europe. And, obviously that's a long time if you're waiting on a big deal. But for me, it's just the only place where you can go, oh, no one's going to email me. No one's going to call me. I don't have to get up for 5 minutes. This is great. So, I hope that doesn't happen.
I saw a TEDx talk that you gave, and you mentioned the correlation between beauty of a space and one's creativity. And I really recommend people go look at this TEDx. The pictures she showed were just phenomenal. Can you tell us a little bit more about the correlation between those two, space and beauty of space and creativity?
Yeah, it's actually an incredibly important fundamental reaction we have as humans. So, and it's not the subjective definition we have of beauty, right? Because that's different for everybody. But it's just this fundamental reaction we have. And often it's to things like nature, it's to certain types of architecture. It's just this human need that we have. We have to have beauty in our lives in those ways. So when you talk to people, even if they don't really relate to that, they're like, oh, if I went to that national park, so in the US, if you went to Yosemite or you went, to somewhere that is just a really beautiful place, everyone has this feeling that, okay, it puts me in a more positive mood, it can help me relax. And so what we haven't done historically is think that fundamental need should be translated into the workplace. So we have, essentially just said this is only functional. We've had grey carpet, grey, walls. We've had one maybe dead fern plant in the corner. Offices were like functional, right? They weren't meant to be beautiful, but we're now starting to see that. And also in our urban settings as well. People will notice over the last few years how that's changing. There's all these green walls in cities, there's high rises with these green walls, vertical walls on them. We're seeing a lot of timber being used in urban environments, in public places, and in the office as well, because those natural materials have this really fundamental impact on us in terms of making us feel calmer, making us feel more creative and more expansive in our thinking. So research on concrete shows it actually makes us feel more constrained and more limited, right? It kind of makes sense. But things where we're in environments with natural materials really enhance our creativity. And actually, Jonas Salk, who devised the polio vaccine, he used to go to the Basilica in Assisi in Italy. So, you can look online at photos of that. If people don't know, it's incredibly beautiful building, and with high ceilings, and high ceilings actually help our brain kind of think more expansively. And he actually said it helped him work through the problems he was having in developing the polio vaccine. And so having environments that do support our creativity and tap into this human need we have is so important, which is why people say, I went out of the office and I went for a walk in the park, and now I feel so much better. I don't really know why, but it's this element of this being in places that just make us feel better.
I think another example I saw you give was, I think it was a public library, but it was a beautiful, beautiful library, and some famous authors actually wrote better in that kind of an environment.
Yeah, so it's actually the reading room that was originally in the British Library, and then they moved it piece by piece to the new British Museum in London going back a few years, and it was opened in 1857, and they had a champagne and ice cream breakfast to open it. And I just think that's awesome. So anyone that is designing a conference, I think if you're having trouble getting people to go when we can go back to face-to-face, if you have champagne and ice cream for breakfast, I think you'll be sold out. Like, that would be amazing, right? They were doing this in 1857. But it was actually one of the first co-working spaces. We think that's a modern phenomenon like Starbucks, but it actually goes back to the Enlightenment. And so it's this beautiful room with this high dome ceiling and all of these books, and all these people that, Mark Twain and, Arthur Conan Doyle and Lennon under a different name, and this huge list of people who used to go there regularly to work because they knew it had this effect on the way that they think. And you can hear modern authors now talking about this, whether it be Spielberg, or I think Bill Gates has this cabin he goes to regularly to kind of think, where it's just kind of in the woods and there's no technology. So the importance of being in an environment that is going to support our creative thinking and make us feel good is being really underestimated in the workplace.
So what should we think about when designing a space to be helpful to us as users?
Yeah, I mean, if you can have natural light, that's obviously really important. Get rid of fluorescent lights. Floor lamps are really good. If we can have the opportunity to use natural materials, then, timber, plants, warm colors, those kind of things we know are kind of tapping into this concept of what's called biophilia, which is encapsulated like in the natural shapes that we see in the natural environment, timber, natural materials, plants, and things like that. And so we have this affinity for that. We don't like square boxes made of concrete. I'm sitting in one in this virtual background, but it's not our tendency. So, and the great thing that's happened recently with TV shows and big box stores, I'm not sure what you have in the US, but like IKEA and other ones like that, is that design has been really democratized. So you don't have to have an architect and millions of dollars to create a space. It doesn't have to look like Google's offices. You can go and buy floor rugs and, plants from your nursery, and you can paint the walls and you can introduce furniture that, there's so many great resources online. And so I think looking at those types of things, and just, is it attractive? Does it look nice, or is it just a wall of grey desks and grey carpet? If we could get rid of grey, I'd be so happy.
I'm with you. I do project management for a living, and I've always said black and white is your friend in project management and gray is the enemy. So exactly. It resonates. Yeah. Recently, I read an article in Fast Company about a 6-foot office concept. Cushman & Wakefield, a commercial real estate company, has developed this 6-foot concept in their Amsterdam headquarters. And the quote from the article is, the core premise is to ensure that 6 feet stays between people at all times. This behavior is encouraged through a properly spaced desk, but also visual signals such as a circle embedded in the carpeting around each desk to ensure people don't get too close. Now, when I read that article, I shuddered. I physically shuddered. And I thought to myself, is that what the future looks like? A world where I only see my colleagues as germ-carrying pathogen delivery vehicles? And that's not a world I really want to work in. So I was wondering, in your TEDx talk, you mentioned that human beings have a desire to feel a connection and be part of a tribe. And what is your take on the 6 feet office and the impact on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've seen some other iterations where they're talking about bringing back the cubicle, and having perspex screens around the desk, like what we're seeing in supermarkets here. The cashier has a perspex screen to protect them in the supermarket. And I'm not sure, because I think, as we've seen with the protests you've had recently in the US, we've had some in Australia as well, and people, even in the face of really good evidence to not go in really close proximity to each other, just their social need or their ideological need kind of overrides that, and that's a really difficult thing to have. In the UK, I think a couple of weeks ago, they opened the pubs again. And that's such an iconic British thing, right? Going to the pub, and there was just thousands of people just pouring into their local pub. But I saw online yesterday, even more horrifying than your example, was there's one pub in the UK that's so worried about this. They're trying to make a social distance between when you go to the counter to order your beer. People often lean on the counter and chat to the person serving, right? That's such a ritual about, what we do when we go out. They actually can't stop people doing that. So they put an electric fence. It's like in a rural area of England, like, that you have for like livestock to stop them going through the fence. And people are like, and they're like, we're taking this so seriously, we're not going to shut down. We're going to electrocute our patrons to make sure that they don't lean over the counter and infect people. So, look, I don't think anyone wants to be in a pub with an electric fence. I don't think anyone wants to be in an office where, there's this circle on the ground and you think, I just have to stop here and I can't talk to you. So I think it's going to go in a couple of different directions. And what we've seen, certainly with large corporates already, is that they are saying, like the Twitters, the Googles, Lend-Lease here in Australia, they've just said everyone just stay at home till the end of the year. Let's see what happens. Are we going to have a vaccine? What's actually going to happen here? Or we're going to bring teams into the office on a rotating basis. So all of Clint's team comes in together, you're just behaving as you normally would, and then we deep clean the office, and the next day another team's coming in. So if your team gets sick, you guys can then stay home, but we don't have to shut down the whole office for everyone. And I think, just as humans, that's far more likely in terms of what we would want to do. And in some industries, it's just not possible to do physical distancing, is it? If you're in healthcare, if you're in the construction industry on a building site, you can't physical distance. And so I think we're going to have workarounds until we see how this is going to play out. But yeah, I don't like the...
No, when I saw that article, I thought, then why don't we just stay home? Because if I have to stay at least 6 feet away to talk to you, I can't see what's on your computer screen. So we really can't get together and collaborate. I may as well just stay home and we'll just Zoom it, right?
Exactly. I agree. I think there's no point. I think, and people, who wants to go to the office and sit in a plastic perspex cubicle and talk to someone 6 feet away? No one wants to do that.
No, but I guess I would contrast it. I think you opened up your TEDx talk with a picture. I don't know where it was, but it was this massive crowd of people. And so I'd like to be somewhere in between. I don't want to be jammed together like that, but also not have to maintain if 6 feet is the right number. Some people say it's longer or bigger. So,
Yeah. And now with the airborne transmission, obviously, that's emerging, then maybe the 6 feet isn't going to matter, because if you're in the same room for hours a day, then, it's going to have the same effect. So we have to see.
Well, I guess one of the positives is the New York subway system has never been as clean as it is now, because they've done some deep cleaning on it. So
that's actually nice. That's a good thing.
So, the two things that I thought about when I read the article, and I thought, well, if I had my prediction for the future, what I'd like to see is maybe some better air filtration systems come out that clean the air better. And the other one is, this will teach us that I don't have to man up and go into the office when I'm sick. I can work from home and not make my coworkers sick.
That's such an important point. We have advertising here. I'm not sure if you have the same drug in the US, but it's called Codral here. It's like a cold and flu, mixed drug with like paracetamol and, ibuprofen and stuff like that. And so their ad used to literally be on TV. It's all about take this and soldier on, right? Go to work, and it would have images of like the nurse in the hospital and just be sick, take this and keep going to work. Okay. And, one of the biggest complaints about these large corporate offices where you're all stuck in the same room each day, the ventilation systems are not great. And there is a big focus on that. But there was this pressure to go to work when you were sick because you don't want to let your colleagues down. And obviously more and more people are in precarious employment. And so that is a stress. Some people just don't get paid when they don't go to work. And so I think companies are really going to have to think about this. A lot of people can work from home. And so we need to make sure that we're not having policies that are putting pressure on people to come to work unnecessarily when they're sick. So for example, that could be as simple as, if you're off for 1 day or 2 days sick, you need a doctor's certificate or we're not going to pay you. So then there's a pressure of I've got to go pay to go to the doctor, I've got to get the certificate, it's a big hassle. And so if we took that away, then, things like policies like that can make a big difference. But also I think there has been a big shift to say, just don't come to work if you're sick. And I also think if you do come to work, as you've probably seen now, and someone coughs or they have a runny nose now, everyone's like glaring at them, like, get away from me, And so I personally, in the past, obviously, have felt that pressure, and I'm sure we've all done it. But now I think even if you have a sniffle, you're not going to go to the office.
Right. And you can only use just allergies so often, right?
Exactly. People are like, allergies don't make you do that.
So switching gears again, one of my previous guests, Allison Wood-Brooks from Harvard Business School, calls it throwing a smoke bomb and switching topics. I want to talk about another article you wrote in January of last year that really makes you look prophetic. The title was, "It's not just the isolation. Working from home has some surprising downsides." Who knew that only a year later, many of us would be doing exactly that? Well, I guess you knew. You wrote the article a year before it happened. So good luck, good job on being prophetic. But
it's really, really interesting, isn't it? Because I certainly, I don't think I'm prophetic at all. I didn't see this happening. I think many companies have flexible work practices before this, and they planned for some people to be at home some of the time, or they plan for a catastrophic event to their building, right? As we saw, tragically with 9/11. Okay, so what if we had to move the entire workforce to another building because of a threat? So they had contingencies for that. But I think very few companies saw that all of a sudden, overnight, your entire workforce would be out of the office, working from home for months, weeks or months. And so I think a lot of companies have struggled with that. And one of the big issues, so we know when people work from home, they're more productive because they don't get interrupted. You were talking about this earlier. It's a great point. Why can I be more productive at home? Well, I haven't got, some people say to me, one morning I got interrupted 80 times in a morning. And if you get interrupted, research has shown it takes you 15 minutes if you're in a concentrated task to kind of get back into what you were doing. So if you're getting interrupted 80 times, you're getting nothing done. So people are more productive at home. And so in one particular study, they showed people were more productive. There was less absenteeism. There was less intention to leave the company or turnover. People were more satisfied with their jobs. But what they found with this full-time work from home was people felt isolated, that they were worried about missing out what was in the office. And they were worried it was going to affect their getting promoted. Because, if you're not in front of the boss all the time and having those water cooler catch-ups to kind of share stories, does anyone know what I'm doing, right? Does anyone know that I actually exist? So people were worried mainly about those two things. I miss my colleagues. People who generally worked in the office kind of had more of a negative view of people who worked from home. They felt that, it wasn't as accepted. And so it could affect your relationship with your colleagues. And so they were the two big downsides. But I honestly think now with the change that's happened, that's going to be taken away. We know there was a study right before coronavirus that people who work from home or remotely get promoted at the same rates as their colleagues. And yes, your relationships might be affected, but now we're all in the same boat. So we've got all these different strategies to do that. It's not like most people in the office and I'm at home. It's like, well, most people are out of the office. And so it's more unusual to actually be in the office. So yeah, I think those challenges from the past are going to be less of an issue.
Another stat that you mentioned in the article that I found fascinating was that folks that shared a physical office were 20% more likely to stay in touch digitally. And why do you think that is?
I think that people can be lazy in the office, so I'm sure we've all can relate to this, that you could be 3 feet down the corridor from someone and you're just going to send them an email, or you're just going to message at them. And so I think there's this kind of, it's done. I can tick that off my list. I emailed Clint, so I don't have to take the time to go and have that conversation. It's actually less efficient probably, because if we do have a conversation, we can kind of work it through and sort it out. But yeah, so people who got moved into an open plan office, I think it was that effect where they just felt forced to collaborate, and they were interrupted all the time and they had noise. So their way of taking control back was, well, I'm actually going to communicate less. I'm going to go talk to you less. I'm just going to message you. So their instant messaging and email went way up, and the face-to-face communication and collaboration went way down. And I think that's an effect of these other things we've seen in open plan offices, where people just can't think to get their work done. So they're just not collaborating.
So I don't have any studies to back this up other than my own 30 plus years of observing teams. And I believe that we have this, as human beings, we have this desire to want to check something off our to-do list. And I'm able to do that much more often if I can just shoot an email to you or send you a text or post something on Jira or Slack saying I'm done, so I can check it off my list. But if I actually have to go down the hallway and talk to you face to face, pick up the phone and call you, I might find out that I'm not done and I've got 3 more things on my to-do list now.
100%, Clint. That's completely right. We become so focused, so we can lose that relationship. We can lose. Trying to be efficient can make us less effective, right? Because everyone wants to just tick, 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 my to-do list is done. I feel so good now. And then even if it jumps back on my to-do list tomorrow because I wasn't done, at least I feel like I got my to-do list done today. And, when you used to call people before coronavirus and they answered the phone, sometimes people are like, oh, damn, I just wanted to leave a voicemail, right? So I could say that I contacted you, or, that I kind of ticked that off my list, but, you answered the phone. So yeah, I do think we are sometimes overly focused on efficiency rather than effectiveness.
Sure. I think that one of the things that I've noticed about collaboration is people tend to want to do these one-way communications because they don't want to have that dialogue. And there's so much power that comes out of the dialogue. There's so much additional information that you get. And I think if I was thinking about living and working remotely for long periods of time, it's okay, I think, to use these other like text and one-way communications as addendums, but don't be afraid to pick up the phone and have the conversation.
It's so important, especially when the environment we're in now. It's much more effective. It might be less efficient because, you have to have the chit chat, but hey, that's really important for relationship building. And it's really important for building trust, which is what makes work more effective and work teams more effective in the way they operate. So don't focus on efficiency at the expense of everything else.
And I also think it adds confusion, because if you think about today's text messaging, you're short, you're sweet, but you use a lot of emojis, and people can interpret emojis differently, right? I was talking to somebody recently where he had done the thumbs up emoji and the person was mad because he thought he was flipping them off, right? Giving them the finger in the US. So it's like, no, that's not what I meant. Or I'm sure we've all done this in the past where we sent in a very innocuous email to a coworker who was having a bad day and read the tone wrong, and it wasn't the intent.
Absolutely. That, you have no control. It's a one-way communication when you text or instant message or email. And so much conflict in the workplace is created by that, because if I'm talking to you and I'm raising something, I in real time can see, I'm not sure how Clint's reacting to that. Maybe that he doesn't understand, or he's not reacting so well to that. So I need to change my approach or explain that better. But yeah, everyone's had the experience. You get back to your email and boom, there's this email in your inbox, and you might have just come off a difficult meeting, or you're having a bad day, as you said, and you might interpret that completely differently from what was intended. And so many issues are caused in the workplace because of that. Yeah,
I've had more than one occasion where I would have a coworker say, look at this, because here's how I took it. What do you think? And have them say, no, that's not what they meant at all. So I was able to bounce it off somebody before I fired back that really regretful email. So
yeah.
So where do you think we're going to end up? You think everybody's going to stay home, everybody's go back to the office, somewhere in between? What do you think is going to happen? Pull out your crystal ball.
Yeah, so I think in terms of corporate real estate, I think we're going to move towards this what's kind of known as a hub and spoke model. So I don't think the head office is going to go away, because there's always been an important statement, a brand about an organization. It's the physical symbol of, this is who we are, and we have this identity related to that, and people still want to come together and they want to meet. But what we don't need to have going forward, and what I think will change, is this huge edifice in, the middle of the city where there's thousands of people in one space or hundreds of people. We'll have a smaller head office, and then we'll have perhaps satellite offices closer to where our employees actually live. Or, if that's not feasible for a company, we'll have, remote offices where people are sharing them, like a co-working space, but it might be a small number of people. Because what people have realized in this is, hey, my life was too crazy before. I spent so much time commuting, and there were things hard about being in lockdown, but I got to spend more time with my family. I didn't have to commute. My well-being's improved. I'm spending more time exercising. I'm sleeping better. All of these benefits. Why do I have to commute for 2 hours a day in order to do my work? And companies have realized hey, we can work effectively from home. We've let the genies out of the bottle, right? We can't say that anymore. People can't work effectively from home. And people are grateful to have that opportunity, because they can balance the rest of their life better, whether it be caring responsibilities, parenting responsibilities, and so forth. So if I want some social contact and I can drive 15 minutes and work in a satellite office or a co-working space, then that's a much better proposition than just commuting half an hour to 2 hours just to be seen, which honestly is a lot of what we were doing all the time. We were stuck in this very, Theory X management style, which was, if we can't see everyone, we can't control them. We have to, micromanage them. And it's amazing how many companies were still stuck in that mindset. So I think going forward, people really value this flexibility, and it has so many benefits. If we talk about the environment, if we talk about well-being, if we talk, the cost to the employer is going to go down significantly, because it's really expensive to host people in an office space in the middle of a city. It costs a lot of money. So I think that's what we'll see going forward. Much more working from home and working more locally.
Okay. I read an article today actually about Silicon Valley and some of the challenges they're going to have, because so many things happen serendipitously through chance meetings with people that won't happen maybe now. If everybody does stay more remote or satellite, these serendipitous things won't be as prevalent. So it'll be a challenge.
Yeah, and I think we have to, as you said, we still need to get together. Maybe we just don't need to get together as often.
Right. Well, you've been an amazing guest today, Libby, and I appreciate you spending time with us. If the listeners want to learn more about you and your work, where should they go?
So you can go to my LinkedIn profile, Libby Sander. You can go to the Bond University website and look me up under there as well in terms of my research. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter, Libby Sander, on both of those as well. And it's been really super fun to talk to you, Clint, and really enjoyed it.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett. To find out more about Clint, go to projectsuccess.com or pick up Clint's book, The Project Success Method, at amazon.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.